Welcome, everyone. And if you guys could just start by introducing yourselves and tell us briefly what role you play in admissions or in your department, that would be great.
Shall we just go across the top? I'm not sure Sonia's with us yet, so I'm happy to start.
Sure, yes, that'd be great if you could start us off.
Hi, everyone. My name's Robin Weersing. Please feel free to just call me Robin. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a professor in the SDSU-UCSD Joint Doctoral Program in Clinical Psychology, which offers just solely the PhD degree in that one particular area. I'm the chair of our selection process, which is complicated because it goes across 2 universities, but has a lot in common with selection processes for clinical psychology programs nationwide. I'm also the associate co-director of the program and would be happy to answer any questions you guys might have. Pleased to meet you.
Great, thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stacey Goldstein. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions for Rady School of Management. So if you're looking at a business program, we can definitely help you with that. I am the main advisor for the Masters in Professional Accountancy, but today I will be speaking on behalf of Business Analytics, Finance, and the MBA. And if you have questions, you can directly reach me and I can connect you with the appropriate advisor. Nice to meet you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stacey.
Hey everyone, I'm Sal Nicolazzo. I'm an associate professor in the literature department, and I am also our director of doctoral studies. So I run our PhD program, which means also running our admissions process for the department. So I can talk about PhD admissions across the humanities. I can also talk a little bit about the difference between master's and PhD programs in the humanities, what might make you choose one over the other, et cetera. So great to meet you all, and yeah, happy to hear your questions.
Thanks so much, Sal. That sounds like it's going to be really informative. So with that, we've actually prepared some questions that we're going to jump right into. But if you, as the audience, have any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat as the event goes on. And then at the end, I'll also give everyone an opportunity to unmute themselves so that you can ask your questions directly. Just so keep those questions, throw them in the chat. We'll definitely have a chance to get to them towards the end. But with that, I'd actually like to start by asking you guys what makes an applicant stand out for your programs? Is emphasis placed more heavily on certain aspects of the application?
Well, on our end, we're a research-oriented degree. So I think the overwhelming factor that we see is evidence of being able to do well in a research environment and actually to not just simply be a good RA, but to have some evidence that can come in a variety of different forms of your ideas to formulate original questions that could be testable. And that might be through having worked on posters or papers, having done a thesis, but that's sort of the next step of graduate study beyond being an excellent undergraduate, is to start to be able to ask your own questions in the field. And so we have lots of ways that we index that, but that's something that if somebody's started to do that, that's clearly exactly the trajectory of what we hope that graduate training is going to be. So that weights very highly. There are a bunch of other factors, but that's probably the one that is central to a lot of our thinking.
Great, thank you so much.
And I will go next. So representing again the business programs here, so with Rady School of Management. So if you're looking at business analytics, finance, accounting, MBA, and we offer flex programs as well. Number one, what makes you really stand out is you're a UCSD student. That's number one. So you're already winning, you're already on track. There's a big benefit. We want to see UCSD representation. We do look highly at our undergrads, but you still have to demonstrate competitive qualities. So overall, we do look at applicants with a holistic approach, but some programs like MSBA, so the Masters in Science and Business Analytics, and the Masters in Finance do look for specific things, really quant scores. It's all about that quantitative score. So common majors would be statistics, computer science, mathematics, economics. So if you're looking at business analytics, they're looking for demonstrative program experience and enthusiasm for analytics. In your application, talk about fun projects you do on the side, like following your sports team and doing the analytics for them. Or if you're in finance, build up that stock portfolio. I had, even for the accounting program, had a student tell me how they made over almost 200,000 off of Bitcoin and other stocks. So they just tripled 4 times my salary just for fun on the side. Put those kind of projects out there. It's exciting and we want to know what you're up to. And then MBA, honestly, it's going to be tough as an undergrad because they really do need work experience. I would say at least 2 years. So if you want the MBA, maybe a little down the road, motivation is also very important. And for my program, it's probably the most holistic, meaning like bring the personality, tell me your story. It's not so much GPA focused. If you have a passion for accounting, you don't have the minor, you want to take a few classes, you can still get into our program. And that's business school in a nutshell. Who's up next?
That was very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I think I'm up next. So yeah, for our PhD program, there are a number of important things we look for. And one of them is sort of similar to what Robin was talking about, right? It's a research oriented program. And so we want to see that you have, both very good writing and research skills, or the capacity to really develop those research skills. So we want to see an example of the writing sample is an incredibly important part of the application. And this is standard across a lot of PhD programs in the humanities, that you generally want about a 25-page writing sample of really sort of good, beautiful analytical writing that also ideally shows your research capacity. But the other thing we also look at is fit with the program and fit with the faculty, right? Do you want to work on something, specialize in something that we have the faculty to support? So we're not, just looking for we're not ranking students on sort of some objective scale of excellence or whatever, who's the most excellent student. It's actually like, who's actually going to thrive in this really specific program, and do they have faculty to work with? And so that's what I always recommend, really researching the PhD programs that you want to apply to, and get a sense of like which specific faculty members you would want to work with, because it's important that you name them and sort of demonstrate your fit with them in the application. So we're looking at, again, both research skills and fit. And finally, we're also looking for, ability and interest in teaching. You don't have to have teaching experience, but you do have to show at least some degree of willingness to teach. You're going to teach when you're here. And this is true in pretty much any PhD program in the humanities. And so that's something else you might want to speak to.
Yeah, I think to follow up on what you said, Sal, that's a really good point. It's not true, I think, with every single PhD program in every area, but it's very true within clinical psychology and just psychology PhD programs in general, that when you're moving from, again, being an excellent undergraduate to being a graduate student at a PhD level, you're really moving from being a generalist to being a specialist. You don't have to be one yet, but that's what you're becoming. And so we do rate sort of overall excellence, but if you don't have a match to a mentor, we won't be able to train you well in what you want to do, nor will you thrive within the training experiences that we offer. So we've certainly had people apply to our program because it's excellent. And I've been on faculty at other places, and it's like, oh, people are applying to it, because it's Yale or because it's a variety of other things. If you're not a fit to the particular faculty member, you won't be admitted, and you won't be, or to a set of faculty members. It doesn't have to be just one. And if you're not a fit to sort of the program training, you can be absolutely, wonderfully excellent. We've had people who literally have perfect scores on the GRE that haven't even made it to the interview phase because it's just not clear what they do here. In terms of their overall training. So it is a different type of thing where you're not just researching a school, you're researching, and is it a good school? You're going several layers deeper than that in terms of the training program, the mentor, the specific labs, the types of things that you would want to do. Now, you can never change your mind or sort of shift a bit associated with it, but it's a different level of focus for the kind of training that you're seeking.
Great, thank you so much. It sounds like there are a few commonalities across applications of things that you guys are looking for, but definitely each program might have some things they're highlighting specifically. So with that, I actually see that Sonia just joined us from the School of Global Policy and Strategy. Thank you so much for being with us today. We just started, and I just had everyone introduce themselves and say a little bit about what role they play in admissions, if you'd like to share that with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and apologies for being late. For some reason, this time of day, I think everyone in Tierra Santa gets online and somehow my internet crashes. So I had to reset my whole system. But again, sure you guys have heard that sort of stuff a million times over the last couple of years. Thanks again for having me. My name is Sonia Steinbrecht. I am the Director of Admissions at the School of Global Policy and Strategy. I've been doing this for quite a while, for graduate admissions for about 15 years at 3 different schools, but I've been at GPS for the longest. So I'm most familiar with the world of public policy and international affairs, but definitely do a lot of volunteer work and helping students who are particularly interested in master's degrees in the social sciences. So super excited to be here and share what I know and to learn from you folks today as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. So the first question that we just went around, we'd love to get your input on it, is what makes an applicant stand out? And is there certain things that emphasis is placed more heavily on in the application?
Sure. Hopefully I won't have repeated things that have already been said. If I'm repeating other folks, just stop me. But I think as I've seen kind of applications evolve over time, I feel like it's becoming increasingly important to tell your story, to make sure that you are really understanding what the program is and where you fit within that program, and really showing who you are as a person. And that idea of what can I do to stand out, I think is kind of a little bit, maybe last decade or last 5 years or something like that, because I think everybody stands out in their own way. It's just really figuring out how to capture your story and to really tell that story authentically. I think that, above all else is kind of, as an application package, what makes something probably the more powerful than anything else.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. That you did not repeat anything that somebody said, but I saw lots of heads shaking, so it sounds like everyone's on board with that statement for sure. So thanks so much. We're going to move on to our second question, which is kind of tangential, but what are the top 3 things that someone can do either during their undergrad or postgrad, if they've already graduated, to make themselves a competitive applicant? I limited it to top 3. We want to get the chance for everybody to speak. If you want to throw something else in there, that's fine. If you just have a top 1, that's fine as well. But what are some really important things that undergrads or postgrads can do prior to applying? Robin, maybe you want to start us off?
We're establishing an order, but it doesn't have to be that way. I was like, I'm going to linger, see if anyone else wants to jump first for a minute, but I'm happy to. It's, I mean, that's a very good question. I think that the main thing, I've debated a lot of answers to this. I think the main thing is to figure out what you want to do. And this is in part going off of what you were saying, Sonia, in terms of the, again, I think that particularly with a PhD program, not to say it's not true with a master's program, you're committing to something which takes a very long time. The average length of our degree is about 5 years, and there's a master's degree folded into that, 5 years plus a 1-year internship, at the end of it. And so it's not something to just sort of jump into or assume that you should do, if you've had a compatible major. It's to really try to think about what it is that you want to do. What are your career goals? What are your life goals? What kind of lifestyle do you want to lead? Understanding what it would look like to sort of be in that career, and to decide whether or not it's the right choice or not. We have very few people to our program come directly for undergraduate. We always have a couple. We have like 1 to 3 maybe in any given year. But most of the folks who come to us have actually either already had a master's degree, usually not in psychology, because a lot of psychology master programs are more practice oriented, but they have public health degrees, they have statistics degrees. We have a few that have experimental psychology degrees, but we've also had people who've actually been working in research labs as sort of paid lab coordinator positions, or have done sort of other things in the in-between that are related, but that have helped to clarify their goals and give them some sort of depth of experience and knowledge that this is a path that they really want to commit to. So I think that that both serves people really well by the time they come to the program. It's a much easier transition, but also it may feel like it's wasting time, but it's not. You know, it's not wasting time compared to either applying repeatedly and not getting into a program because you don't really have your head wrapped around it in a way that lets you describe your path forward in the field in a compelling way, or starting a program of work that then you decide that you're not happy with and that you withdraw from in some way. So learning as much as you can about the daily life as both a graduate student in your field and as the career options that go from that, and getting practical experience that then lets you sort of commit to it fully. It's sort of a cluster of answers. So it's one thing that has a lot of parts.
Fair enough. That was really helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay, hello. All right, so again, going with the business programs, complete opposite of what Robin just said, meaning majority of our students are coming from undergrad. So it's a little different how we do it. UCSD students do have an advantage. Again, majority of probably are younger students right out of their bachelor's. So with that, I'm putting on my notes here. Programs are 9 months to 2 years long. Average program is 1 year. For MSBA, so Masters in Business Analytics and Finance, during your undergrad, this is number 1, choose quantitative electives. That could be business analytics class. Make sure you're getting programming experience. For the accounting program, take those minor classes or some accounting classes. Number 2, internship or work experience. It's helpful to have, it's not a requirement, but it is a chance to use experience in real world, share that real world experience. It could even be not paid. Number 3, especially this goes for business analytics and finance, try to use GitHub, G-I-T Hub. It's a platform where you can practice coding and have mini coding projects. I believe it's free. Faculty likes to see this. There's also Toggle, and I encourage students to put these links to your accounts and add it in your application or resume. So the big tip is build your quant skills and practice ways to use it if you're specifically looking to get in business analytics and finance, because they get thousands and thousands of applicants. So that's how you're going to stand out. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, no, this is so helpful, I think, to illustrate just how different programs can be, because since I'm thinking about PhD programs, my answer is going to be a little more similar to Robin's answer. So I absolutely second her recommendation that you really just think about whether you want a PhD and why, don't get a PhD just because you think it might be cool to be in school for a bit longer. It's a long program. It's not easy. I think only do it if you truly want to do it and you know what you're getting into. And so the way to find out sort of what you'd be getting into is talk to your professors. Talk to your professors in your field. That's sort of thing number 1, and ask them about their experience in grad school. Like, go to their office hours, ask them about, what advice do you give to people who are applying to PhD programs? Ask them, what are the top PhD programs in the field I want to be in? Because there's not like one university is just good in every program or good in every field. No, it's really, really specific. There are specific programs that have good reputations in really specific fields. And especially if you think you might want to be a professor, you really, really want to aim for the absolute best programs in your field. The other thing you should talk to faculty members about is just graduate school funding and the financial sort of aspect of it. And a thing I always like to try to demystify for undergrads is you do not and should not ever pay tuition in a PhD program in the humanities. You do not pay tuition, or you shouldn't. If any program wants to charge you tuition, don't go there. You should be funded, and that funding should both pay your tuition and give you money to live on. Now, what you want to do is compare the funding packages and really think about, which programs are going to pay me enough to live on. And of course, that's going to vary a lot depending on cost of living, where the program is located. But I think students sometimes think, oh no, that's an Ivy League school, it's going to be too expensive for me. No, that's a school with a lot of money. They're going to pay you better. So you know, aim like what you want to aim for, like you should be thinking in those terms. But again, ask your professors. And then the final thing I would recommend is if your major has an honors program, definitely do the honors program. It's a great way to get a taste of the kind of research and writing you do as a grad student. In the literature department, our honors students, you know, work closely with one faculty member for most of their senior year. They use it to write an honors thesis, which is, you know, that generates a good long research paper that you can then use as a writing sample. And it also gives you sort of a taste of like what it's like to really dig into a long research project. And you know, if you really love it, that's a good signal that you may indeed enjoy a PhD program. If you really hate it, that's good information. You know, it may not be for you. So if your major has an honors program, I highly recommend doing that, or any other kind of undergraduate research program like TRELS or McNair. You know, anything that's going to let you do research with a faculty member.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all that information. That was really great. Sonia, do you want to jump in and let us know what you think of that question?
Sure. I wasn't sure if I was next in the line or not. Yeah, so again, it's kind of every other person who's talked here, right? So my answer would be much more similar to Stacey's, in as much as, you know, we are professional schools, right? And so the trajectory of students who come to a professional school is employment post-graduation, right? It's employment in the field, most likely not in academia, but, you know, potentially maybe an administrative sort of a role, but generally not in research. We do, you know, we offer a PhD program. It's quite small, but the vast majority of our students are in 2-year degree programs or 1-year degree programs who are really trying to gain the professional skills and mentorship to hop right into the workforce post-graduation. And so that's why our schools also have really robust career services. So I would say, you know, we do a lot of work to prep our students for internships between their first and second year. Generally, we do a lot of work to connect them with employers before graduation is even close. So that's one of the key differences, you know, in the professional schools, you know, as opposed to some of the more academic and programs or PhD programs. So thinking about, you know, what to do as you prepare yourself for potentially applying to a professional school, I'd say, you know, one thing that I think is really valuable is to use LinkedIn and really utilize, you know, the school searches and to see what people are doing post-graduation that have been to these programs and have, you know, have earned these degrees. It's also a really great way to just kind of to envision yourself in the future, a career that you might like that you may have never thought of. So I always say, hey, put in School of Global Policy and Strategy, put in GPS and see where our alums are, see where they're working. You know, you may come to me and say, I really want to work at the World Bank, or I really want to be a Foreign Service officer at State Department. And I say, okay, well, that sounds really interesting. Why don't you, you know, check out the other, you know, 3,000 alumni who've graduated from our program and see what they're up to. And, you know, generally folks come back and they say, wow, I didn't even know that was a career trajectory for a degree like this. And so I think that LinkedIn is really, really great for people who are considering professional schools to kind of understand where degrees like this can take you. And then also, you know, the funding piece is also really important. Different from PhD programs, we generally have limited funding for master's programs. We do offer fellowships, but they are definitely not fellowship packages that, you know, will cover everything plus. We have a few that will cover, you know, full tuition and fees, and some that will support living, but they're very, very limited. So that's something that you want to consider as you look at the programs and think about, you know, how much debt are you willing to take on as a professional school student? Are you going to work while you're in the program? Are you going to work and save prior to the program? Which is also, you know, can be a really great idea, not only from the financial standpoint, but also from just the professional experience standpoint. You know, we generally, the majority of professional schools these days are taking some students directly from undergrad, but we usually like to see some professional experience, right? 1, 2, 3 years. which gives us a sense that, you know, you really have thought about this decision and want to come and pursue this career. But it also gives you that time and that mental space to make sure that you're committed to, you know, the financial obligation, the, you know, the academic obligation, and just all of the things that come along with committing to a graduate program.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, it's really great to see kind of the differences across across departments and even types of programs. It looks like the professional programs versus academic programs definitely tend to veer towards two opposites. So that was great. The next question is regarding letters of recommendation. So maybe comment initially if your application does or does not require letters of recommendation, and if they do, a very common question that students have is who should write my letters? So if you guys could comment on that, that would be great.
I'll just jump right in. We definitely have letters of recommendation, and they're really important. We have, I think it's 3. I don't remember who accepted 4th, but I know it's 3. They should be from, ideally from research mentors. You know, an ideal application would be somebody who worked with you when you were an undergraduate and sponsored you, to sort of go off some other comments, on a senior thesis project. And then another letter from when you've been out in a post-baccalaureate research position and you picked up another letter along the way there. And then for the 3rd letter, possibly somebody who you knew you in a more academic environment to sort of key on some other stuff. Somebody from a quantitative class. I think we're actually getting a little bit of a crossover between a few of the programs on quantitative skills, where I haven't commented on that before. We do a lot of quantitative analysis within psychological research. And so somebody talking about the fact that you not only were good at statistics, but you enjoyed it, you know, or that you tutored others, you know, that would be a really lovely, you know, packet of letters of recommendation. I think that, you know, letters from classes that you did well in are fine, but they're really best if they're the type of classes where people were in a position to evaluate not just that you performed well, but your analytical skills. Like, were you able to understand the field at depth, form hypotheses, question evidence, write well, which has come up with what Sal said for sure. And that's sort of the kind of classroom letter that would be more compelling. A class in research methods, a small sort of seminar that had some aspect associated with that. Professional field references. I mean, what I've been saying, I think is true for psychology PhDs in general. As I said at the beginning, I'm in clinical psychology, although we are most definitely a research program. Sometimes people think that clinical experience where you're involved in volunteering or in mental health settings is critical. That's something that we, of course, like to see, since obviously you want to work within these populations, and a knowledge of a population is a positive, but we're not selecting folks on the basis of whether or not they would be exceptional full-time therapists. It's more of, are they scientists who are very clinically savvy and clinically informed and will ask the right kinds of questions about clinical problems and psychopathology and the development of interventions. So just letters from, you know, volunteer experiences where you have good empathy. It would be best if that was included in a letter from someone else who is also describing things like, and you did exceptional research, you know, in the population. But more general character references, or references just that you're an excellent student. Those are things that we actually hope and assume everyone has who's applying. So with your letters, you're really trying to highlight some of these other aspects, which are kind of, again, that you're getting a sense that a lot of the PhD programs and the master's programs have commonalities, but they're like at a different level of specificity, you know, in terms of, you know, how far along a particular path you should be. And I think that here we're looking for like a different level of specificity within the specific field that you might be studying in, versus demonstrating aptitude with particular skill sets. It's aptitude by context, which is really going to set you apart in terms of letters at the PhD level.
That's great. That was really insightful. I haven't thought about a lot of those things, so thank you so much.
I agree. I'm learning a lot too, so this is good. So with that said, now I want a PhD. So now with that said, going back to the, going to the business programs. So yes, letters of recommendation are required. So I didn't mention this before, but only one is required if you are a junior applicant. So if you're a sophomore or a junior, you can actually apply at least to the Master's of Professional Accountancy program a year early and get all the career support and our resources included. This is something new that we started the past 2 years. It's been a big success. We're hoping to continue in our other programs, business analytics, finance. It's an opportunity for you to see the transparency, how you like the program, and if it looks great, you can continue on when you're graduated. So that's something separate, but typically it is 2 letters of recommendation required. And my best advice is, professor or supervisor. So if you don't have a supervisor from work experience, then 2 professors. If you're looking for business analytics or finance, ask someone who can speak or validate your quantitative background or skill sets, but either professor and supervisor in a perfect world. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll just add briefly to what Robin said, because again, yeah, our PhD programs are more similar, especially in humanities fields like, literature in any language, history, philosophy, that sort of thing. You really just want academic letters, like letters from your professors, especially professors who know you well, people you took small classes with, or people who even in a big class you got to know by going to office hours, by talking to them a lot, by, or by meeting with them after the class ends. Students sometimes come to me saying like they're worried that they don't know if they want to apply to grad school, but if they don't apply now when they're seniors, they'll lose the chance to get letters. And I always reassure them like, no, it's fine. I took 3 years between undergrad and grad school, and I did no work that was at all relevant to what I wanted to do. I worked random office jobs. It's fine. It's not a problem. Your professors, you can get back in touch with them. I routinely write letters for students applying to PhD programs 3-4 years after they graduate. That's not a problem at all. And so if you are not sure if a professor remembers you, then reach out to them, ask to meet with them, and ideally have a few meetings over the summer leading up to the fall when you might start applying, because then you can talk to them more about what you want to do, what your research interests are. And those meetings will also help the person get to know you even better and refresh their memory if it's been a few years. So yeah, professors who know you well. A PhD program in the humanities, you don't want letters from job supervisors. It's just not relevant. So that's a big difference.
Great. Thank you for pointing out that difference. And thanks so much for sharing the advice about, asking letters later on. That's definitely something that we see with students quite a bit who decide to take that time off, and they worry about, will my professors remember me? What can I do? Is this typical or not? So thanks so much for commenting on that. Sonia, did you want to add something?
No, I'd just say that our school, these professional programs, again, do require letters of recommendation. Generally, one like the business school, one professional and one academic. And then, one other thing I would add is that when you are approaching your professors or former supervisors to, write these letters, that you make sure that you're including, a resume when you're asking them, that you're including, in your request, some reminders to jog their memory of, I took this class, you gave me this grade, I wrote this paper, you had these comments on it. Or remember, we worked on this deliverable together and we attended this conference, or, just some things that, we have to keep in mind, particularly faculty at UCSD have so many students that they are working with every year, that it's incredibly helpful to give as much information as possible when we're asking them for letters of recommendation, because then also that helps them to write the letter, right? It not only reminds them of who you are, but it also helps them write a great letter for you.
Thank you so much. That's really good advice, I'm sure. And I saw lots of head shakes when you said that. So it looks like across the board, you can really tell in a letter if the professor remembered your work well when they write the letter versus not so well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, just to do a little punctuation mark on that, I think the point about, I do not mind personally receiving a relatively brief initial ask with a brief reminder of who you are and how I know you. And when your deadlines are roughly, and the goal of when you're going to apply. But this is not a gigantic email. It's like a little email. And then I will write back, of course, I would be delighted to write you a letter. And I will ask you, if you've not sent it already, for a resume or CV. Ideally, if your program requires a personal statement, I would like to read it. It's where it says what you're hoping to do, and if they're very different for different programs, pick the one that you love the most, so that I can see what it is that you want to do with your life. And I will frequently have occasionally very organized students who are applying to many, many places who will put together a spreadsheet where it's basically, this is the name of the program. This is when it's due. They are going to send you a link to let you know when you have to, follow it. And I am hoping you might comment on my quantitative skills, sort of like, and there'll be multiple rows, because within clinical psychology, it is really not uncommon for people to apply to 15 programs at the PhD level. The acceptance rates vary from about 2% to 15%. At programs, it's a very, there are many things that you can do to get yourself within a better odds ratio within that, but it's a very, very competitive environment. So I will get requests for letters, and it's pretty complicated because they each have different instructions, associated with it. So anything you can do to both remind people, just as Sonia said, who you are, what you did, et cetera, but then also anything to navigate what's necessary in order to get your letter to where it needs to go, or a clue on that end, is desirable. And I never mind personally if about 3 days, 4 days before it's due, if I haven't submitted it yet, just a gentle reminder saying, just thank you again for offering to write a letter. Just wanted to let you know that it's due on November 1st. And I so appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I am unoffended by that. I view that as helpful, just in case something has gone to my spam folder as a letter request. What some of these automated ones from programs do, it's good to follow up, and it's acceptable to follow up.
Absolutely. I would second that. There's nothing that breaks my heart more than a student who comes a month after the deadline and says, well, I haven't received a response from you. And we say, well, because you didn't complete your file. And, it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate because these applications take a lot of time and effort to get through. And, some programs will extend those deadlines, PhD programs, not very often. So it really, really is, just want to second your mentioning, Robin, of just, make sure you're following up on your files, all of your files, to verify that those letters are in. And then if they're not, circling back with your recommenders to make sure that they have plenty of time to get them in.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate, especially Robin, all the detailed kind of examples you gave of how to approach your letter writers. I think that's something that we talk about a lot with students, and they often come and say, I don't know what to do, or how to do this, or how to say this, or how many times is too many times of asking, so that was really helpful. Thank you so much. So with that, I'm actually going to come to my very last question, and then we'll be able to open it up to the floor. My last question is about international applicants. Do you have any advice for international students or students who are applying from abroad?
We routinely look at and evaluate international applicants. I think that one thing which is a little complicated on our end is just we need translation sometimes, not literal translation, but of what the different GPAs mean. So some, like for instance, India is, I think, on a 10-point scale. And so we need equivalence in order to be able to, frankly, on the front end, every one of our applications is read by a faculty member. The full admissions committee is 2 to 3 faculty members, as well as 2 senior graduate students. And not every application is read by the full committee. In part is a triage for the, nearly 1,000 applications that we got last year. But because of that, because we do some initial triaging, we do it in terms of likelihood of succeeding in the program. And we use things like GPA. We used to use the GRE. We are not using the GRE at the moment. But so we use GPA and evidence of research experience through a questionnaire that we provide to do an initial triaging in a likely to move on to interview and a less likely to move on to interview. And the less likely gets the single read and can be promoted into the more likely group. So we have lots of paths for people to show their excellence. We don't want to rule anybody out in an initial screen. But since GPA on our end is part of that, that's very difficult to translate internationally sometimes. And if there's any additional documentation that would let us know what this research experience means in the context of an international university, or what your level of involvement is, anything which can be in the personal statement that can help us ground and understand what that training experience was, or what those academic experiences sort of demonstrate in terms of your skill and competence, really helps us bridge the divide and evaluate how well that both prepares you for our program and how well our program might be able to serve you.
Great, thank you so much.
And just going off of that, for international students specifically, I would say that, the Toefl score is important. We do look at that. The average student for MSBA, for business analytics and finance, thousands and thousands of applicants. I'd say the majority are international students, not as much for the master's in accounting or MBA, but the average GPA is 3.2. MFIN is 3.4, and you can see the class profile on the website. It's really all about the quant percentage. So the quantitative percentage, I'd say at least an 80%, especially as an international student. Again, it's just competitive for everyone. It's all the same in that regard. Everyone's looked at the same. It doesn't matter if you're domestic, permanent resident, international student. If you don't have a high quantitative score for those two programs, it's going to be difficult. But some programs do not have a GRE or GMAT requirement. The Master's in Professional Accountancy does not. MSBA Business Analytics does not right now, but that might change. Finance does. So everyone's a little bit different. Having a solid academic background is important, but if you're showing other ways, then you'll be considered. The main thing is just showing who you are, personality. If your GPA is low, state why in your application. Something happened with your health, been a past rough few years. I still have students in Shanghai that have been in lockdown. Talk about that. We want to know, and that's really what it's all about for us. Like, tell us what's going on so that can kind of explain your story and maybe why your GPA is not as high as you wanted it to be. And that's it.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we also we get a lot of international students as well, and I think if you're an international student applying to PhD programs in the U.S., then honestly, I would say, if you're coming from UCSD, like you already know how the U.S. academic system works, and your letter writers will too. So honestly, I just there's a if you were coming from a university abroad applying to the US, then yeah, there are those that you may need the transcript translated, and you may also want to talk to your letter writers about just how the norms and conventions of letter writing are very different in different countries. We generally know that when we're a very international department, so I don't think it generally hurts applicants. We just kind of know that American letters tend to be more effusive than pretty much anywhere else. But that may not be true in all departments. So it could be helpful to sort of coach your letter writers. If you're, coming from UCSD and applying to PhD programs in other countries, then I would say, do a bit of research about how PhD programs work in other countries, because they can be very, very, very different. And so I would say, again, talk to your faculty mentors about that, because you may want to take a really different strategy in both applying and choosing a PhD program if you're going abroad.
Great, thank you so much.
So one of the things that I see frequently from our international applicants, we receive a lot of international applicants at the School of Global Policy and Strategy, and a lot of short internships instead of sort of one longer internship or professional experience. And that's also true, I think, for some of the research experiences that are on the resumes that I look at. So I would say that quality is definitely more important than quantity when you're looking to list experiences that you've had on your resume. Having an experience for 6 months or a year, or the same experience that you have over the course of 2 or 3 years is so much more, I think, valuable. It shows a lot of commitment, it shows depth, than having, say, 7 internships of 1 month in a lot of different places. So that's definitely something I would say that I notice is a little bit of a trend with international applicants, is the quantity and diversity, so the breadth over the depth. But I would say that to really consider getting additional depth on your resume when you're looking at applying for grad school.
That's really great advice. Thank you so much. So with that, we've come to the end of our planned questions, and I definitely want to open it up to the floor to anybody who would like to unmute themselves and ask questions. We've gotten lots in the chat, and I'll definitely be pulling from those, but I just wanted to give students the opportunity to unmute themselves and ask a question directly if you so wish to.
Yeah, I do have a question for business program. My name is Alex Tian, and I'm major in quantitative economics, and I plan to apply for the MSCBA program at UCSD. But the problem is a lot of quantitative management science course I took is pass no pass. I'm not sure if that's going to affect my application, and if it does, is there any way I can just fix it?
Great question. I don't know the answer, but I will find out for you. So you're doing the right thing. You're in the right course. If it's something that can't be prevented, let's do this. I'm going to put the advisor's email, Emily, directly in here, and you could say Stacey said to reach you. She will tell you what you need to do at this point. And we have a whole undergraduate department at Rady that can advise you on what you should do in this situation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send that to you directly with her contact information, and reach out to her and ask her that same question. She'll give you an honest answer. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
You know, I think this might be a good opportunity to actually hear from the other panelists on the pass, no pass thing, because I do, you know, because of COVID, we're starting to see a ton of grad school applicants that have that as part of their transcript. And I often get the question of, how will this affect my admissions? So I'd actually love to hear from all of you about your views on that.
I could say for me, you know, I can't speak for everybody in every humanities PhD program, but for me as a reader of an application, no problem. Because really what I want to see is what you learned in those classes, right? Do you have an excellent writing sample and an excellent statement of purpose and good letters? Great, you know? So yeah, for as far as like, I just think the quality of your writing as a demonstration of everything you have actually learned, that's the important thing. So I think for humanities, at least, you know, I personally wouldn't worry too much about pass, no pass. I mean, we're all, you know, it's faculty who are reading these applications. We know what the last few years have been like. We know a lot of people have been taking pass, no pass for very good reasons. So we just, you know, we're aware of what's going on. Can't speak for everybody, but that's my perspective.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, the way we evaluate applications, other than that initial sort I told you in terms of our triage process with applications, which I think many programs do something like, is that we actually rate people on dimensions as part of a holistic rubric, which we developed with great effort. This is what I've been doing the last 2 years. And there's multiple ways to show excellent on any of the domains. So for instance, we have research experience, we have quantitative reasoning, we have, you know, excellence in academic background preparation, we have leadership, we have ability to work in diverse populations in research. You know, we have a whole bunch of different domains. And then we have instructions to our raters on where to look in the application to find evidence. And one of the places that you look is GPA. So, you know, I think that it was critical. We would probably mostly raise eyebrows if you had pass, no pass across all of your quantitative classes, but not any of your other classes. You know, and so that it was selective and there was no other evidence within the application file about quantitative skill and background. It wouldn't make us not look at your application, but a broader point, which I think, I don't remember who said it, my apologies, but it was a really good one, which is that if you have circumstances about your academic journey in general, not just related to COVID, but about caregiving responsibilities or economic hardships or other things that sort of are important components of your academic journey that should really be understood as context for what you've learned and other skills that you've potentially shown over time, share those. And also, please make sure to address any weaknesses that you think exist in your application directly. I think students don't want to bring up weaknesses because they are concerned that that will draw attention to the weaknesses. The raters will see them. It is better to put it in context. Like, I don't test well in classes, but look, I did all the analyses on these 2 papers that were presented at national conferences, and please see my letter from the faculty member who supported me. I do statistics extremely well in practice. I just don't do it well under speed. Super great information. So that's a long answer to the pass, no pass, but it's, we would look at it, we'd notice it is far from a death sentence. We would just look for the context associated with it. And as long as it's within the context of showing good skill, same answer as Sal. We just want to see whether or not the skills and knowledge are there.
And that, I just wanted to touch on that because I just realized where programs are a bit different. So there are times when we cannot accept pass or fail because you need those undergraduate courses in order to meet the CPA exam requirements or the CFA. So for the accounting program specifically, you have to have 6 undergraduate courses with a letter grade in order to, and then meet the credit requirement by taking our master's in order to sit for the CPA, your CPA license. So in certain situations in business analytics, that's why I wasn't sure with that specific course. That's why, reach out to that advisor. My best advice is look at the program criteria on their admissions page on the website, see if there's prerequisites listed. If there are, then you probably do need a letter grade for that, but that's where you can reach out to the advisor. We are still being understanding because of COVID. You might be okay, but if it's something like a license, no, you won't. You will have to take the class and get a letter grade. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. That's I'm glad we got insight from everybody on that. There's actually time for just one more question. We have lots from the chat that unfortunately we won't get through all of them. I can pull from there. If somebody would like to unmute themselves, go ahead.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm a 2nd-year student and my major is psychology. So because I almost finished all my major requirements, so my plan is to take some minors in the future or maybe take a double major. And because my personal interest is art history, and I know that art history has nothing to do with the psychology, and I'm just wondering, should I just take another social science minors or double major to make myself more competitive, or it is totally okay for me to just go over my personal interest?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to run across a professor who tells somebody to not be curious. So sort of at an absolute level, that's in part what college is for. I think that the question, though, if you're talking about being strategic, is what do you want to do with your degree? An undergraduate degree in psychology can lead to a PhD in psychology. It can lead to degrees in public health. It can lead to law degrees very frequently. It can go in a variety of different paths. So it's less of what degree you have now than what it is that you want to sort of do with it. So if you don't mind me asking you a follow-up question, since I'm the psychologist on the panel, what's the direction at this point that you're interested in heading?
Yeah, actually my major is business psychology, and it's like account. Yeah, so but I know that we don't really have that kind of graduate program for this major. I'm not very sure, and so my main interest is still about psychology, like doing the research or something like that. So that I guess there's but I didn't decide which specific path I'm going to so that's why I'm still exploring myself.
Yeah. I think I'd probably talk to your professors then about what aspects of your business psychology classes you found the most interesting. And it may lead you to conversations over in the business school. It may lead you into conversations with social psychologists who study a variety of things related to consumer behavior and organizational behavior. It could lead you into industrial and organizational in psychology, or into cognitive psychology about decision-making in a variety of directions. Or I think that there are quite a few PhD social psychologists on faculty over at Rady. So it can go in a bit of spots. So, while you're deciding, I'm not going to say don't take an art history class, but I would probably talk with your professors a little bit more to say what about your major was most exciting, and then try to get some more experiences there, in part so that as you face your next decision about what to do next, you've done, I think in different ways, you've heard from each of us that experience is good. Experience in the direction you want to go, whether it's work experience or research experience, et cetera. It also just kind of helps preview for you. Do you really want to apply to that next graduate program in that area? So my suggestion would be to work on that. But Stacey, this seems sort of also relevant and up your alley. I don't know if you have thoughts to add.
With business psychology, that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. It is actually, we have been getting more of those majors. So that's where the minor really comes into play. So with any major, you can always add a minor, figuring out what you want to do. But it's true, we have seen more of a trend with business psychology, and then they'll get an MBA, which keeps it general. So my best advice is keep reaching out to your professors and advisors. I'll put my contact information in here. If you do have anyone has questions about our graduate programs, feel free. I'm for the business school, Rady School of Management. Just contact me and I'll directly connect you with an advisor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So that wraps it up for us. I know that we have some questions we didn't get to. Feel free to book an appointment via Handshake with our pre-grad advisors over here at the Career Center. We'd love to meet with you and answer more of your specific questions, do some exploration. And thank you so much to our wonderful panelists. We really appreciate your diverse input. I think students really got to get a good idea of what's behind closed doors as far as admissions goes. So thank you so much, everyone.
Best of luck,
Thank you.
everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.